Hello, guys. My name is Alex, and this is Can You Believe That? And today I'm here with Rasberry. He's a very interesting person. We have a lot of things in common. I am a bisexual person, a bisexual artist. I really like internet. I started a lot of years ago, and I know you understand about something that is converging a lot these days, which is understanding how to apply technology, how to understand databases, and how this is connecting to our culture, to education, something that 10, 12, 15 years ago was so distant. For an example, here in Brazil, it's something that it's part of us. And I am doing a major in sociology, and we are always like talking this how to take this technology, introduce it into class. And I wanted you to tell us your story, how you became to be who you are, how you became to work with Wikipedia, and what is the overall importance of that in your words? Because I think you can get what I'm feeling, but I know you can contextualize it in a way that people that maybe are a little bit outside will understand.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Like you said, there's no separating technology from society, and the world is changing very quickly now. I don't know, where should we begin?
How do you like when you're
Technology and society today, how do we capture it? Yes.
yeah, no, it's kind of difficult, but what I wanted to know, like when you go to class, like when you meet students or staff in the university, do you feel that there are gaps that are closing and people are beginning to understand? Like, do you have to explain the importance of understanding that this is not something that will go back? Like, oh, there was a time and we didn't use it, we didn't have databases. We need this now. Like, there's no going back. And
I know exactly what you mean. We're in the year 2021. Every country is connected to internet now. People have different access. I share information in Wikipedia. I help other faculty at my university and students and researchers share information on Wikipedia. And I still have to continually explain the importance of the internet, and that internet is not just a fad. Different aspects of the internet are not a fad. This is permanent. This is going to change society forever. I'll give you some examples. So universities are still entangled in conventional academic publishing, which is very important. Researchers need to publish academic research papers, but the days of paper journals, they're long gone. And there's many things about traditional university or scientific publishing that just aren't working today, like restricting access to the journals, charging high publishing fees, valuing journals over other kinds of publication that result in people actually learning or public access to the information. I think it's while the peer review process and the journal publishing process is important, I think it's undervalued how universities or researchers share information with the community and make contemporary science and research understood. So talking about sharing with Wikipedia, this isn't something that most researchers are ready to do because it's just too public, it's unfamiliar. And even though at this point Wikipedia has been around for 20 years, people are skeptical about every web platform, whether it's Wikipedia, social media, websites, or anything that's not traditional.
yeah, because something that I'm always thinking about is you have like this student, she's going to publish a paper. She has like fees going from the rooftop, and she has to pay to put this paper in a place, and it's going to be rejected like in 5, 6 places until she gets one. And when it gets to this one, the people that will read and come in contact will be people that really understand that. But I think the great problem is what you are sharing. Like, how do I get this type of publication, this type of content into places where people won't be able to afford it? And you said the thing with Wikipedia for 20 years now. I remember when I was like a teenage boy, my teacher would say, you can search anywhere, but not Wikipedia. If someone uses Wikipedia, I'm going to know it. And it was like, it was this monster. It was like this menacing thing. Don't do it. Don't go to Wikipedia. And it's been 20 years. I think it was the same thing with YouTube when it started, and people say, but someone's going to post that, and we cannot control it. And now we see we have this giant that is restructuralizing how we like get a relation with films, with media. Um, so I really believe in that point. And from what I can see, you not only work with accessing information for people, but also trying to take the LGBTQ community, LGBTQ plus community, and other communities that are that don't have the access to uh, the education and resources we have, which is the picture of inequality. Uh, do you think people are understanding this and understanding that we have to take action?
I'd like to emphasize that this isn't just about me. Of course, I'm part of a social movement. It sounds like you're familiar with this, and to some extent you participate in this well. Access to information, a globalized conversation between people who are concerned about the same issues. There's activists in every country, in every culture, in every language, and they're increasingly sharing information on the internet. In my view, there could be a lot more sharing, a lot more publishing. People do produce all kinds of content, and they want to reach a larger audience. And they struggle to find ways to do this. If you look at the advertisements, or you believe the advertisements are always going to tell you that you should share your content in a commercial platform, that the only way to get an audience is to partner with some commercial organization that's going to sell advertisements or sell your content and give you a cut, or give you some kind of benefits for tying your content in with a restrictive copyright and then talking to the other people in their network. But there's such a thing as the open movement, where there's people who believe that there's ways to put your media out there on the open web, the open internet, and then you can freely reach and collaborate with other people without having some commercial organization or some leader be the mediator for the conversations you have and the research you're doing. Of course, the LGBT community has been trying to do this for years, and this is because it's a marginalized community. There's LGBT people in every country in the world, and oftentimes they feel like they have more in common with other LGBT people in other countries, even if they don't speak the same language. There's a shared experience that they would have with other people who are trying to get their attention in their own country. So the LGBT community, it's a very international community with a shared cultural experience of marginalization, misunderstanding, and needing different access to different services, like certain kinds of healthcare, certain kinds of civil rights services that we're able to collaborate. Wikipedia is one such platform where people can meet each other. And I'd like to share, for people who don't know, Wikipedia actually exists in multiple languages. So when there's a given Wikipedia article in one language, anyone can translate that into other languages. And in this way, we're able to share information across cultures. So, for example, if there's an LGBT cultural figure who's a hero in one country, and maybe that country typically doesn't get a lot of global media attention, activists in that country can write this hero, this local figure, their biography. They can do it in whatever language is local to them, and alert the international LGBT wiki network. And then other people can translate that biography into other languages. So you can just be an individual sitting at home. You know what's happening in your community. You put something in Wikipedia, and there's channels by means of which this information can distribute around the world so that other people can learn from it, celebrate it, remark on the example. And it doesn't require money to do this. Of course, you have to be a writer. You have to meet Wikipedia standards. But this is still something that individuals can do to have a global impact with relatively little effort, especially as compared to what was possible in the media a generation ago.
Yeah, because when you say this, what comes to my mind is that at least for me and for some people, for quite some time we we started seeing the internet as this depository that is so fast, and people are putting the information. And I
Mhm.
said, okay, I can be a passive agent of that. It's
Yes.
not going to be a problem. Sometime later, I look at this and I say, oh my God, uh, we have all this fake news. We have like the most absurd stories, people believing in things that I cannot say a lot from the US because I'm not there. But from Brazil, like to see what people would believe like 10 years ago on the internet and today, you say this is insane. Like they are saying that the Brazilian vaccine is killing artists,
Yeah.
that President Bolsonaro said if the person is going to die, the person is going to have this and that. And also in the memory aspect of things, like we had something called Cinemateca here in Brazil, which is
Yes.
a museum. I don't know if this went to the press in US, but it
It
burned
did. It did. It just burnt down. Yes.
burned again. And this is it. This is the information. This is like a place where you have history burning down, and sometimes the information is being misplaced by someone who has an agenda, whether it's a political one, financial one. And for what I can gather, uh, something happened in your career or in your life that you said, I cannot be a passive agent of this. I have to take action into putting a content that people will consume for their education, for their daily life, that will not harm them or their community. Not in a question of not expressing, but if I shoot something that it's a lie, that has a political, financial agenda, saying that that is true, I think we start to cross some lines where everything starts to be, at least for me, too blurry. Too blurry. Do you agree with that? How do you see that?
It's a complicated issue. So I'm for community empowerment, and I also believe that there's a shared objective truth. There's such a thing as the consensus of the majority, the scientific consensus. And I think it's possible for everyday people, even who are not doctors or not trained scientists, to be able to contact scientists and find out what this consensus is, and share this objective information that should be accessible and should be believable to everyone globally. Now, Wikipedia, it has medical information on it. And a lot of people have questioned Wikipedia's reliability, as you said, your teacher did. And when you say, if someone were to say, can I get my medical information off Wikipedia? That can especially scare people because Wikipedia has information on diseases, drugs, treatments, these kinds of things. Now, it's not to say that Wikipedia is an anarchy where anyone can do what they want. It's also not a democracy where the majority always gets their way. We have a quality control process. And when it comes to medicine or science, what Wikipedia is trying to publish and summarize is the scientific consensus. And it does this even if the political consensus is something else. And sometimes that happens. Wikipedia will say the scientists say this, and it prioritizes those statements. And it might mention that politicians say this, but it's going to emphasize the science. This came up in the context of coronavirus, the COVID vaccines. Many countries had misinformation where they said the vaccines are harmful. Wikipedia has a treatment of this. It asks scientists in every country of the world, show us your published papers that have gone through the peer review process outside of political influence, just among universities and medical researchers. Show us these published papers with the evidence. And Wikipedia has a presentation of this, and the medical consensus is that vaccines are safe. But when you ask who puts this information into Wikipedia, it's rarely or never the medical societies or the doctors who are doing this. Much more often, it's the individual activist who, for whatever reason, has decided to edit Wikipedia, and maybe they're not a medical authority themselves, but they, as an individual, can still contact the highest level organizations and say, give me your best information. And they can put that best information from the most reputable authorities into Wikipedia. And that becomes Wikipedia's consensus. Now, you were talking about the film archive in Brazil burning, and yes, it did make the national news in the United States. especially among Wikipedia editors and people who care about this kind of media access. We're conscious of these kinds of things. It's unfortunate that the archive burned. More unfortunate that I wonder what wasn't digitized. Ideally, all these kinds of treasures would be digitized and become global treasures instead of only national treasures, because people would celebrate these kinds of things if they could be passed around the world. And if you digitize it, it's more safe forever. The film is going to rot someday. We've got to digitize things eventually. Wikipedia keeps historical records of these kinds of things. So supposing something awful were to happen and someone were to have political influence on Wikipedia, right now we still keep historical edits of everyone who's ever made any kind of change. We keep, even if someone deletes something off Wikipedia, there's a record of the information being lost. And I hope that there's always online archives that help people keep knowledge from one generation and pass it on to next generations. Even if politics in the future says this isn't the way, I hope we always have the archives. But these are complicated issues, and it's hard to say how robust the activists can be in the face of political opposition.
Yeah, because in the end, like, we can do it what's in our scope, but I think that it comes also, as you said, as if a community we don't care. There isn't going to be a lot of changes. I see this from the Brazilian the film archive, the Cinemateca, because people, of course, people are sad when that happens, but people aren't pushing an agenda like, is it safe? Is it approved by the fire department? It's this stuff that stays out of the line, and when we get to a point, it's when it happens. And I also wanted to ask you, like, you've been working for how many years now with Wikipedia and databases?
I started editing Wikipedia when I was an undergraduate in university. That was in 2004. I got a job editing Wikipedia in 2012 for a nonprofit organization that wanted to share information. That's kind of unusual. There's not many Wikipedia jobs in the world. I wish that there were. I wish that every cultural organization somehow had the funds or made the funds to staff someone to share information on the open internet, not necessarily about Wikipedia, but just to make their knowledge, their publications and their media that they themselves designate as being for the public, put them on the internet somewhere, make them accessible, and tell people to reuse and remix these things. And if Wikipedia helps people do this, then they should hire a Wikipedian, but it's possible to do these things with any kind of social media or just by setting up an online archive. I just want people to have access to the information online. That's really what I'm about.
Because the impression that I have is that you have Wikipedia, which is it's been around for a lot of years. They know how to work their servers. They have a what seems to be a really organized and not only organized and professional, but also with strict rules of what it can enter, what will be a content here on this page, understanding that this is a medical page is different from a cultural page, a political page, where here I can have multiple angles on this, but if a vaccine is going to do harm or not, and we don't have many angles. Do you think Wikipedia, it's a powerful platform that we have, that we had for many years, that it's not being used to its full capacity?
I do think it's not being used to its full capacity, particularly outside of the English language. So Wikipedia is several things. It's the software platform, which coders have to develop continuously to keep up with technology. It's an administrative structure. So there has to be some kind of legally registered entity that makes sure they pay the electric bills and make sure they pay the software developers and manage the legal issues. It's the content that it contains, and that's what people actually want. And Wikipedia can either produce original content or it can acquire content, such as from an archive or a museum or some kind of university or knowledge partner. And then there's also the community of content creators, the volunteers who register accounts and they're engaging with the platform. where Wikipedia's capacity is the weakest, in my opinion, is in growing up community organizations to support local and regional volunteers, especially outside the English language. There are Wikipedia volunteer groups in many countries in the world. There's several in Brazil. There's also several in Portugal. So Portuguese is better represented than a lot of languages, but still it's very vulnerable because you have these volunteer communities that don't have full-time paid staff to help keep them robust, to help do outreach, manage communication. There's certain things that volunteers can't do. And I'd like to see more communities outside the English language somehow get access to funding, get the stability of having some community organization, and then be able to empower the local volunteers to grow their community in the way they want. Like, how do you prioritize doing outreach at a university or a research institute or perhaps a friendly government agency? It's just not going to work out if most of Wikipedia is governed and managed by English speakers. And I wish as soon as possible that the governance could be minority English language and majority other languages, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, because we are in that place where you have so many countries in the world when sometimes it doesn't go after some of those steps. Like we are always running in the same place. I don't know if you know this, if this is something that has a version on the US, but something that was a big part of my childhood, especially because I was 25, I'm 26 now, and we were entering that thing of the internet and starting to understand it all. But we had a comedy version of Wikipedia, which was the Cyclopedia in Brazil. I think the site is still active, and I know for a fact that a lot of my friends became aware of Wikipedia after they started using the Cyclopedia, which was like it's the same thing. It's the website looks the same, but it's just parodies, and they were so well written. And what I got from that was that they had people that really understand how to make that text flow. And this is really interesting because I think when we converge this things, like you had the Wikipedia, and as it was something that the teachers didn't like it, and it has like this social stigma on it, and you have the Cyclopedia, that it was so funny, and it started to like take a turn to sub niches in Brazil, which was really interesting. So you would have like this person that it's only famous on my hometown for a very specific group, but he would have the page, and it would be hilarious. And this is a fun thing, a cool thing, but I'm sure there are other examples where people take the platform, take the idea, take that concept, and use it to create other things, to create other connections and expand what they're doing. Do you have? I bet you have the experience. You've seen this a couple of times. What are like one or two stories you could share with us?
Well, I'm not going to name any names, but I'll say that they exist in the English language, and I know that they exist in other languages, and people can find these kinds of things. I'll say something about technology and society again and how they change. So these kind of parody or humor or satire sites, they show up, and different people try different experiments in them. And as Wikipedia grows and develops, these sites grow and develop also. Something that I've noticed about these sites over the years is how they mature as other websites develop codes of conduct or rules about appropriate behavior on the internet. It used to be that these sites, they were often crude and rude, and sometimes they would make fun of local people or community organizations. And as more people have had conversations on the internet, I think that many people have realized that individuals need to work together. If you're talking about other individuals, you should be lifting up the small guy and stick with your community. And that when you do parody and satire, it's okay for the little guy to direct that at the government and the rich people and the people who are more responsible for society. And that different activists or people who are putting themselves out there as individuals, they shouldn't poke so much fun at each other, except in a good-hearted way, that lifts each other up. So in my opinion, a lot of these user-generated content websites on the internet, like what you're talking about, used to be more rowdy, and they're still rowdy today, but now people know that there's certain things that you say and certain things that you don't say. And the best target for jokes and poking fun at and criticism is definitely the government, and definitely the big people who are saying that individuals can't collaborate with each other, and that you should disregard the little man and watch the big corporate media outlets. Like those are the best targets for satire.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like that about the encyclopedia at the time, because it was exactly what you said. Because like 90% of the websites that were similar, they were poking fun of the small guy. They were poking fun of something that was a feature from that person. And in that case, in that website, this Brazilian version, you could see that they could understand how to make fun of the environment, how to make fun of the fact that that this person is producing something that doesn't have a lot of impact, but I like that and it makes fun of me. I think this is healthy. Um, but it's also that thing, like if you look what was a joke, what was funny 10 years ago, and a lot of people say, yeah, but it wasn't a problem for me. I think sometimes it was, and people wouldn't like verbalize that it was hurtful. And we never know what is going to be hurtful for a person.
People are getting more sensitive to cultural differences. They come on the internet and they see there's all kinds of people in this world. It's interesting to meet diverse people, and it's also interesting to meet someone who's like you, but who's in another culture, another country, speaking another language, and you still have something in common. And for the first time ever, the internet's making it possible for people to meet and collaborate in these conditions.
Yeah, no, it's something that I never thought it was going to be. It's a 24/7 thing. Like I have a friend that he was like playing Xbox. He met a guy from Canada. They started talking and talking and talking, and they become almost best friends. The guy came to Brazil. He had never left Canada, not once. And the first place this guy comes from is for a month in Brazil. And he was like, oh my God, but São Paulo is like this. And where are the beaches? And I said, oh, hold on, we're going to show you. We have a month. And I think this is the most interesting thing. This is the most uh, this is so rich. Like nowadays, when I'm talking to my teachers in sociology, like we have to pass some steps there, because I can in the next year I'll be able to go to a college, to a school to teach. And the way I see now is that they say we shouldn't be mad at the time with Wikipedia or with websites. We should find ways to make the student, the person that takes that content, understand that sometimes it's biased, sometimes it's not, and I should always double check. Even if you go to a doctor and the guy says we have to do an operation, and I think we should do it like that. And you see the first one, the second one, in the third one, maybe the guy will say, "Oh, wait a minute, try to take this medicine for a month, try to do this, get some weight or lose some weight, because we can do it at smaller." So in places where the consensus for something, it has elasticity, imagine that this won't apply to the internet. Seems to be nowadays for me something that it's not possible. I think we should get the children and the elderly and us in a place where we question the information. And I don't know exactly how can I say this to someone? How can I proceed this to a person that it's starting to use the internet, it's starting to see this content?
It's a very difficult conversation to have, and I think every country and every culture struggles with explaining how is technology changing society. Where I typically begin the conversation about Wikipedia is to ask, if you think that people shouldn't use Wikipedia, then what should they use? Like, what is like Wikipedia, but higher quality and better? And sometimes people say, well, what about the other encyclopedia? There really is no other option. Wikipedia is very broad in scope. And also this goal of translating the general reference information into every language in the world, there's no other organization that's doing that. Not the United Nations, not the World Health Organization for medical information. Even these so-called international organizations, they operate in a few languages and don't have a plan to share information to everyone in the world. I'm not saying that Wikipedia is actually going to be able to accomplish this, but at least Wikipedia, the community of volunteers, they're saying, this is what we're going to try to do. This is our goal. With regards to health information, it's very difficult. There's some health issues that are a statement of fact. You can look them up in a paper, and something like Wikipedia might be able to present those statements of facts. There's other things that you really need to talk to your doctor about. It's just too complicated, and it's never going to be in Wikipedia. But if something is a statement of fact, I think people have a right, wherever they are, to ask the question, what information exists in the world? What's the conventional answer to this question I have? And they can even ask, what are the fringe or the minority or the alternative answers to this question? And I think that people should have access to this kind of information too, when there's multiple points of view. I'm not sure that Wikipedia is ever going to be able to cover all this, but the community's at least trying, and we're seeing how far we can go.
And for something that I like watching now, but gets my head in a not in a very clear space, that we are now talking here. We are very far away, but there is a camera here at me. We are connected to the internet. I'm going to edit this video, post this video. Like, if there is something that we're doing all the time is creating content, distributing this content, seeing how people react to this content, resharing, and it seems to be that this is the number one place for any human at any time. If you have a phone, if you have an internet connection, why do we have this explosion in audiovisual production, this explosion in communication, but we see, for what you are telling me, we seem to be halted in a place where this is something that people are searching, but at the same time, the places where you can condense this, give it an organized form to it, people don't care. Maybe it's something too new for a company to understand that will impact them positively.
It's complicated. Different people would have their own opinions. I'm just going to share the opinion that people around the world are not as independent and in control of their media streams as they think they are. A lot of people think that they make their own decisions about what they're reading and what they're consuming, and they think that they get a neutral and objective news and media stream. But actually how it works is that there's some very wealthy, very large international corporations that do a lot of research to capture market share and to capture eyeballs so that people watch their commercial media stream. And I know this sounds crazy, but I think it's the reality that advertising, the money that's funding this capturing of attention is advertiser funding. So advertisers pay different media outlets to post ads on content, and then the media outlets do whatever they need to do to get people to watch them. There's not many places you can go on the internet or in the world where you can get access to media without having to consume advertisements.
Yeah, I do believe that, because my first contact with seeing like the one information being distributed in very different ways, it was like this person felt, this person was pushed, this person felt after it was pushed, and I said, okay, there is a dialogue here in this magazine, in this channel. Is I can see there are positions, right? And especially here in Brazil, if you talk about drug police enforcement, there are we have, I believe, two major TV channels that are owned by churches, and but not people that, oh, that good guy from the church, that guy that came up with 30 million reais from like 2 to 3 weeks, that guys that were expelled from an African country because they weren't following regulations. And what I can see now, and sometimes it's impressive to me, like my feed on Instagram for the feeds that appear to me, like it appears a lot of food because I'm always ordering takeouts, and I saw something that I was like, oh, this is not possible. Like it would be burgers, fries, and it started to show more ribs with this and that and this and that. And I started to say, oh my God, I'm going to a friend's house. We are eating more people. We are ordering food. And in some way, this information got there. I had a friend that died in a motorcycle accident. I had never seen a Harley Davidson commercial in my goddamn life. And after he died, I talked to a lot of people, and people were, oh, how he died? And I was like, oh, he got in an accident with his Harley Davidson. And a YouTube ad from the Harley Davidson appeared to me at the night. I had
That's
never
gross.
seen.
That's
I don't have a
terrible.
motorcycle. Like this is, and the first times that this started to happen, like I'm talking about Michael Jackson. It appears a Michael Jackson video on my feed. I was like surprised, but nowadays, me and some friends, what we feel is that all the information that I put in my computer, in my Facebook, or even what sometimes talking close to my phone, this is out there. This is not mine. And I know that one of the ways to do that is like a person is going to download a malicious app, is going to click on a malicious website, a fake news website, and we have all this data breach.
The most malicious apps are the ones that are from the big media houses, the big social media platform.
Yeah,
They're pretty malicious themselves because they're trying to control what you read and what you access.
because what it seems to me, like if I have like this predominant social network, the government will stop them from taking some information, from acting in some way. So I allow this guy to put an app, to put something on my website. He's in a place where he's not going to get scrutinized like I'm going to be. So this guy's going to sell for a third party that information, that pattern of behavior, and I'm gonna buy it from this third party because it's not a problem.
That's how it happens. Yeah.
And this was something that we didn't watch a documentary. Like my friend was thinking, and he said, "Oh, I think it's that. I think it's those apps." And reading like the terms of those apps, when you like stop to do it, you say, "Oh my God, this is insane."
It's very new, and there's no individual can understand what's happening here. It's intentionally complicated. Users are not supposed to understand what's going on, except that you can see the trend. You're giving power to corporations to come and invade your country and invade your culture and have their way for marketing and advertising and controlling political power.
I know, and now a lot of information is appearing that our elections were really based upon the most bizarre techniques of this very violent marketing of misleading information. So what I believe is that we are on the verge that we have to understand that we are already facing the troubles and the hardship from not being that attentive to the content, and not trying to see us as relevant to have this organization. What do you think is the next step or the next chapter to this? Do you what do you think people will maybe companies will start to look at this in another way, or we have a we're going to keep on walking sometimes into the dark without exactly knowing what's coming in this regard?
I think that we can trust that corporations and government are going to seek more power, just like they've always done. This is going to happen in every country, and I'm fearful for the future. It could have happened that there was no Wikipedia, and if Wikipedia didn't exist, I don't think a company or government would have tried to establish anything similar. And if Wikipedia goes away, if for whatever reason it has a problem and it needs to close down, I don't know if there's going to be another NGO or not for profit organization that gets established to serve the same purpose. There's a handful of international nonprofit organizations in the world that are trying to share information. Some that I admire are Internet Archive at archive.org, if you know that one. Something called OpenStreetMap, which is trying to give people access to mapping data for free. But none of these organizations have a lot of money. And if corporations keep spending money to capture more market attention and not share with the public what they're producing, we could be facing a future where companies and the most brutal politicians are controlling all access to information. And if this happens in one country, it's a tragedy. If it happens in a whole set of countries, then that's very alarming. And it's possible that this could happen around the world where a few powerful players spread information freely however they like, and there's not much that individuals will be able to do about it. I hope that the internet is always free and that individuals from one country can always freely discuss with other people in other countries and also publish records online, archive them appropriately. You mentioned, for example, police shootings in your country or police violence.
Yeah.
When these kinds of things happens, an individual might just know of the incident of violence that happened in their own neighborhood. Maybe that doesn't make national news. Maybe it doesn't make news at all. And typically these things don't make global news. Forget about that. But I wish that when people made reports, said, I have a complaint against the police or I have a complaint against the government, the correct place to direct that complaint is not to the police themselves or to the government. It's into an online public archive where someone can say, I freely made this report. I'm sharing it with other people in my community, and I'd like this archived forever. And that individual shouldn't be harassed for making the report. They should be free to do this. And when people can't complain about government and corporations or whatever else they want to complain about, the big people, I mean, little people shouldn't complain about little people, but the little people should be able to complain about the big people, and the big people should not complain about the little people. That should be prohibited. Whenever little people are prohibited from making their complaints about the big people, I think that's very problematic.
I know, and from what I saw in the last 4 years in Brazil is the substantial change in this, because you have politicians suing TV presenters and people. It's not that there was a guy that I used to hate that guy. He's a Brazilian uh, humorist, and I don't think he's funny. I never thought, but I started to engage with the guy in the moment that politicians started to sue him after he made a joke. One politician after the other, and a lot of people said to me, but he's a homophobic person, he's a horrible person. And I said, I understand it, but people cannot shut him up on a TV program because he makes a joke about the inefficiency that is happening all the time for quite some time. This is really strange. And when you said this about the neighbor, I actually did a research for my sociology course, like 2 pages, something very small, but about profiling in my neighborhood, because I live in a very interesting place, because I have places where people can do anything on the street and the police won't come. You have places where they will stop and harass anyone that doesn't fit this profiling of them, which is, if you're not white and you seem rich in this part of the neighborhood, you're going to have a problem. And they will start with guns on point, beating the person before they ask a question. So I think what you're bringing for me makes a lot of sense. I think we are still grasping on the magnitude that this free range of like bending information, when this information is assumed and lived on as reality at the point that we are converging with internet access, this would be anarchy, would be chaos, and not regulated by the people, but by establishment that continues to show us that if it is in Brazil and US, it doesn't hold up.
So how do we retain this power for the people? How do we protect our rights and do it at scale? Because we have to have a plan for every country in the world.
Yeah, no, this is a normally when people ask me questions like this, I have an answer, and all I can say to you is that I'm kind of scared because I think we're just entering a very strange and uncertain path. And every time that I see, like when I saw what was happening with Israel and what we have now after the troops got out, it seems to be the start. But I think people like you, people from the communities, this little video we're doing here from people that really put their lives on the line to create an environment where everyone is free. I think if this is the first step, it's a very beautiful step, and I'm really happy and glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. Big issues, yes. Needs lots of small steps from many people.
Thank you very much. If people want to see more of your job, there is some place people can communicate with you, can share ideas.
I'd like to make a shout out. So if people want more information about Wikipedia's activist community, if they really need to contact me, they can contact me. But actually, there's Wikipedia editors in every country of the world. You can go anywhere in Wikipedia, and even if it's the wrong place, just say, I want to talk with people from such and such. The Wikipedia editors will direct you. There's all kinds of places to have conversations in Wikipedia in every language. And I would say if anyone has questions about who's making the articles, how can anyone contribute to the articles, what kind of community organization is there in Wikipedia, anyone's welcome to go to this website and just start posting questions. A human's going to read those questions and then direct you to get more information. So it's a standing offer. That's the best place to go for more information.
But if people want to contact you to talk in more extents, interviews, there's your contact. But I really like what you said now, which is don't talk to me, the individual, as the big person. Talk to the community as a whole.
Yes.
That's really nice. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Alex.
And this was our interview, and I hope to see you guys in our third episode of Can You Believe That?